Good Sunday evening, everybody. Welcome back. This is week 28 of me drawing every day for a year. Let's get into it. This first spread is of a Nissan POW. I'm not a car guy at all, but this was my first car that I ever owned, and I loved it. It had so much character. I lived in Japan for 2 years, from 2003 to 2005, and this is this is when I purchased this car. I haven't had cars since, but a bit about this car: it was fantastic. It had a lot of character, and that's why I bought it. The salesperson who sold it to me said, "Do not ever open the sunroof." And you know what? I opened the sunroof the first sunny weekend that occurred after I bought this car. And it was great. I was driving down the road with the sun beating down on my head. Fantastic. Didn't think anything of it. And I closed the sunroof when I got home. The next day it started to rain, cats and dogs. And the reason why the salesperson told me never to open up that sunroof was because it leaked. And so I never did open up that sunroof. I actually had to caulk the seams so that the leaking would stop. And I was known in my local town as that weird foreigner who had a really beat up car and caulking around the sunroof. And everybody would stare and laugh at my car. But I had a great time driving it. The next spread, just playing around with fountain pen again. I recently watched this video on YouTube about an artist who did these beautifully rendered, detailed ink drawings, mostly architecture, mostly buildings in Paris with like really ornate detailing. And he said something that really resonated to me. He said there's no possible way that he could draw every detail precisely. So what he does in these drawings is to draw an effect of those details. So he's not drawing every curve and every gargoyle eye. He's just making an effect, much like how I use oil paints. I'm not painting every leaf when I paint a tree. I'm sort of painting the effect of a mass of leaves. So I'm painting shadows, big forms, and sculpting those bigger forms into smaller forms with shadow work and highlights. So that his statement really resonated with me, and I'm trying to use that approach when it comes to my fountain pen work, especially the fountain pen that I have. It's a broad nib, so I can't really get into much detail, especially, for example, at this scale of drawing. Subway Rider, and I need to work on my hand drawings. What inspired this particular half of the spread was his hands here. I didn't like it when I was riding the subway, and that night I went home and did a whole page of hands. I'll probably be doing a lot more hands in the future. More fountain pen drawing. This is a bit of a write-off of a spread. I wasn't too inspired, so I was just drawing people and trying to get used to making marks with my fountain pen. And how do you convey a face at this scale with a broad nib pen? So that's my problem right now when I use fountain pen. Like, how do you put enough detail into a face but not overloaded with line work that it just creates a smudge of a face, which this is right now. And the last spread for the sketchbook actually are a few faces from the what site? It's Everyworld, I believe, everyworld.com. It's a bunch of faces that are photographed. The subject matter is taken from American fairs, and it's an amazing resource if you like sketching portraits, which I do. And so I was just trying to produce some portraits that night. Anyways, this ends this particular sketchbook. This is like my second sketchbook this year. I finished it July 20th. I'm quite happy that I'm like still churning out spreads on this project. But I still have two more spreads I'd like to show you for this week. So anyways, let's get to the last two spreads that I did for week 28. This is the first spread. This was a guy on the subway, and yeah, it really made me uncomfortable actually sketching on the subway with this size sketchbook. I was out in the open, people were looking at me, but I just had to sort of go ahead and try to finish the sketch. And I was playing with the idea of me in a similar pose on this this side of the spread. My first spread in this sketchbook, still trying to get comfortable with this size. Anyways, on to the next spread. This is my father again. Another practice session, and the objective here was to try to push the limits, like the upper limits of how much line work I could do, in this case in my father's face, that would still convey my father's face. And so it was all about working with values. I'm not too sure, well, I don't think this was a very successful portrait, but I know where the upper limits now are, and so I could dial it back in future portrait drawings using my fountain pen. But I kind of like this spread because I was looking for those upper and lower limits of how much ink I could put down. So I kind of know now how to calibrate future drawings using the amount, how much line work I could use to convey a face. So anyways, this is the last spread for week 28. Thank you for joining me. Tell me what you think about my work so far. It's like more than halfway through this project. I'm really happy how it's going. I think I'm improving in some areas. I'm branching off into other areas that I don't think I would have thought about doing. For example, fountain pen work, but I'm happy that I'm doing this project. So thank you again for joining me. I hope you have a great week. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.